I've actually got out here to go through with a long range scope mechanism. I'll go through a brief thing as what I'm talking about there. With our ELR shooting, we need to essentially adjust onto target. Now with a normal scope, and all the things I've been through before, we try and get as much internal elevation as possible, and then we can go up to that point, and then we can use holdover. The reason I use a second focal plane scope is so I can zoom back and get more holdover. But then when we go past that point, then I run things like this down here. So obviously my very long shots, I've used the cold shot base, which gives me more adjustment, a little bit more flexible, not quite as reliable. This is the air attack, which gives me this adjustment where I can actually tilt the whole scope. Then by tilting the scope, so I already run a decent base, tilting the scope up, so I'll have the scope up on essentially a 60 MOA base, which is my 100 yard zero, and then go up further by, this has 70 MOA, I've got to essentially the 70 on top of that, so it gives me, with 120 adjustment, gives me a total of 190 minutes of elevation. Like I said, there's other ones, there's the Ivy, there's the cold shot, which will let you go further, but you're still tilting your scope up. You start to fight some problems with that. You start to fight the fact you've got to get your scope very high, you're going to bang into the ground, you've got to raise your cheek rest up, you've got to move things around. Well, the guys over at TACOM HQ, have come up with another way of doing it. What they're doing, you'll see on the front of the scope, there's an attachment which can be attached to your scope. I've got it on the sunshade, you can put it on your scope, which is probably the more thorough way to do it, or they have a roll cage system, you can attach to that. But what it's all about is attaching, take those off there, is attaching this unit, which has magnets that holds it on there, and this is essentially a mirror unit. Now it's doing essentially a similar job in a very different way. This is basically, in a very simple way of looking at it, it's a periscope. It has a mirror down the bottom and a mirror up the top. Just like a periscope in a submarine, you're looking through two mirrors and you transfer your vision up there. What this does in the periscope side of things is this bottom mirror is adjustable, so you can actually twist it backwards and forwards. You've got some lock-up screws on the outside, and then there's this little adjustment screw here that you can twist around and adjust your periscope, adjust the angle of that. What that does essentially is exactly the same thing. By adjusting this angle here, it's actually changing the point of view very slightly up the front here. By doing it that way, the scope doesn't need to move, your cheek rest doesn't need to move, nothing else needs to move. It's done in the fashion of, they're very nice clean mirrors, so there's not a lot of difference, and I'll see if I can set up get a shot so you can see that of what we're actually looking at this target here. Not a lot of difference in vision, and it gives you this adjustment that lets it actually change the actual MOA you're actually receiving. Now, the way they talk about, the way I've seen talking about it, is by resetting your zero. To be truthful, that's not the way I do things. I'm using 100 yard zero. This scope is still at 100 yard zero. And then what I set it up for is I'll adjust, and you can do this by essentially setting it up against I just did it inside the house, 10 yards away, a door with tape on it where I could actually see things, and then adjust it. So you can actually set it to a different point. Now whether that's an extra 100 MOA, an extra 200 MOA, up to an extra 400 MOA of adjustment you can put on there. So that's in the 100 mil sort of thing, but it's in the MOA, which is the language I talk, that's up to 400 MOA of adjustment. So essentially it means, not that I have a shot for this thing at this level, but essentially on any scope, to be truthful, once you're set up with the right bits and pieces, that you can adjust this scope to actually have, with this unit off, this is 100 yard zero, 120 minutes of elevation, so it lets me shoot out to around the 2600 yards with that setup there. This one's on an adjustable base, so adjusting this lets me shoot out to about the 3,000 metres, or just about the 3,000 metres by adjusting it with this setup here. That's as far as it goes. Nice solid setup, but even if you ignore this piece here, let's make that a solid base and have this set up so it has 100 yard zero with 120 minutes of elevation. We adjust this unit to where you want it to be, and I can whack it on the front there. Right now that is set up with a 200 MOA adjustment. So that means that I then, this combination, without touching this adjustable base, has 320 minutes of elevation in it. And like I said, that can go up to 400, which means this setup could have 520 minutes of elevation. So listen, awesome setup. You know, I'm about to do some testing with it, we'll do some shooting with it and see how it actually behaves. But this is, listen, it's obviously another way of skinning the cat, and it has, I think, some real benefits. The not moving your scope around, the not having it on a big wobbly base, or, you know, obviously the other way to do is machining up a great big rail with 300 minutes of elevation on it. And you'll see with them, you actually have to raise everything up, raise your cheek rest up to get to that angle. This leaves everything down. There is, you're also, on my big rifle, on my 375 Gibbs, I have a 33-inch barrel, and I had to go back to a small muzzle brake to shoot it. And that was because my line of sight, even when my scope was up on its big base, was going through the barrel. An advantage I see with this, I haven't set it up on that rifle yet, but essentially is because this top mirror is up so high, it's going to be looking over the barrel. Even at probably, and I don't know what the height that is, but probably up at the 400 minutes of elevation, I'm still going to be looking over the muzzle brake and not have that problem. So anyway, I think it's a great idea. I'm going to do some testing with it. I'm going to do some testing with it out here today. But there's an idea of the TACOM HQ guys, their idea of how to give us an adjustable or more adjustment for in the way of MOA for our extreme range shooting is a novel one, and I think it's a great idea. We're about to see.